I remember the exact moment I knew something was wrong with my marriage. It was a Wednesday evening last spring, a week before our 15th wedding anniversary. My wife, Lauren, was humming to herself as she got ready to go out with her friends. Lauren hardly ever hummed. She's a civil litigation attorney, sharp, efficient, and not prone to random bouts of joy. But that night, she practically glowed in our bedroom mirror, fixing her hair just right and smoothing a new blouse I'd never seen before. "You seem happy," I said from the doorway, trying to smile. I leaned against the frame in my work clothes, khakis and a polo with the company logo, feeling grubby next to her effortless elegance. I'm an engineer by trade, a problem solver by nature, but in that moment I couldn't solve the equation in front of me. Why was my wife beaming like a teenager on prom night? Lauren caught my eye in the mirror, and her expression shifted. For a split second I thought I saw guilt, or maybe that was just wishful thinking on my part, that she might feel bad leaving me and the kids yet again. "Oh, it's just nice to get out, you know," she replied lightly. "Work has been so stressful. I need a girls' night to unwind." I nodded slowly. This would be the third girls' night in 2 weeks. Our 2 children, Megan and Josh, were already in their pajamas watching a show downstairs. They'd grown used to Mommy breezing in for a quick peck on their foreheads before disappearing into evenings of supposed camaraderie with her old sorority sisters. I used to hear about those nights, funny anecdotes, gossip over wine. Lately, she'd grown vague. "Just the usual," she'd say if I asked how it went, then slip away to bed while I cleaned up stray popcorn bowls or juice boxes left from her absence. "Don't wait up," Lauren added, grabbing her purse. She walked over and gave my cheek a quick pat rather than a kiss. The gesture felt oddly formal. As she passed me in the doorway, a wave of her perfume lingered, something floral and new. Not the subtle jasmine scent I'd bought her for Christmas, but a bolder fragrance, another small change. I listened to her heels click down the hardwood stairs and the soft thud of the front door closing. In the quiet that followed, I realized my heart was pounding. The engineer in me started running through data points, new clothes, new perfume, frequent nights out, secretive phone habits. Yes, that too. She'd started keeping her phone face down, silencing late-night texts with a quick tap and an unreadable expression. Each change on its own might mean nothing, but together they pointed to a single, devastating hypothesis. My wife was having an affair. I didn't want to believe it. Lauren and I had built a life in Colorado Springs, a home full of busy schedules and kids' laughter and the quiet routines of 2 working parents. We weren't perfect, far from it. She worked long hours at her law firm, and I often brought my design projects home to tinker on after dinner. We fell into bed exhausted most nights. Romance had been the trade-off, it seemed, for stability. Or at least that's what I told myself whenever I felt the distance growing between us. Now that distance felt like a chasm. Sitting alone in the kitchen after putting the kids to bed, I stared at the untouched plate of dinner I'd made for Lauren. The chicken piccata had gone cold long ago. I poked at it and wondered how many girls' nights start with a lie. There were other possibilities, I tried to reason. Maybe she really was just reconnecting with friends to cope with stress. Maybe the new clothes and perfume were her way of feeling better about herself. But then why hadn't she invited me to meet these friends in ages? Why was she so guarded with her phone lately? I recalled last Saturday when she'd flinched as I walked by, quickly locking her screen. She claimed it was a spoiler about some TV show she didn't want me to see. I had nodded, but her excuse felt paper thin. My appetite gone, I cleared the table and washed the dishes, trying to push away the gnawing uncertainty. Part of me wanted to snoop, check our phone bill for unfamiliar numbers, or log into her email. But trust had always been a cornerstone of our relationship. At least it used to be. I wasn't sure what was left of that trust, and I was afraid of what I might find if I went looking. Instead, I poured myself a tumbler of whiskey and sat in the darkened living room. The kids were asleep upstairs. The house was utterly quiet. In the silence, my mind replayed the last several months, searching for clues I might have missed. How long had she been pulling away? Perhaps since late winter? Lauren had turned 38 in February, and I threw a party with our friends at a local brewery. I remember she was on her phone a lot that night, stepping outside to take calls and coming back with flushed cheeks I assumed were from the chill. When I asked who kept calling, she said it was a work case she couldn't discuss, and I let it drop. Looking back, that might have been a lie, just like the emergency deposition that made her miss Megan's school play in March, just like the flat tire that made her 2 hours late to our son's championship soccer game. I ran a hand through my hair, frustration building. If my wife was cheating on me, I needed to know. Living in limbo was unbearable, but I also knew that confronting her without proof could be disastrous. She was a lawyer. She'd deny, deflect, maybe even turn it on me for doubting her. And if I was wrong, accusing her could shatter our marriage for no reason. I had to be sure. 1 week later, our wedding anniversary arrived. A modest milestone at 15 years, but important to me. We had agreed to keep it low-key, given how busy things were. I made a reservation at our favorite Italian restaurant and arranged for my sister to watch the kids that evening. Lauren said she might be a bit late due to a court hearing that afternoon, but she promised to meet me at the restaurant. I clung to that promise like a lifeline, hoping I was wrong about everything. I got to the restaurant at 7 p.m. sharp and took a quiet corner table. By 7:30, I had nervously refolded my napkin 5 times and drunk 2 glasses of water. She hadn't shown. I texted, "You on your way?" No response. The waiter gave me a sympathetic half smile as he refilled my water again. At 8 o'clock, with still no word, embarrassment and worry gnawed at me in equal measure. I told the waiter to give me a few more minutes. At 8:15, my phone buzzed. I snatched it up, expecting Lauren, but it was my sister. "Kids are fine. You guys enjoying your date?" I managed a tight reply. "Not exactly. She hasn't arrived yet." My sister sent a frowning emoji and asked if I wanted her to stay longer with the kids. "Please," I typed, "just a bit more." By 8:30, I could no longer pretend to the concerned staff that someone was coming. The server quietly brought the check for my untouched chicken parmesan. I left a tip, mumbled an apology for taking the table, and walked out into the crisp night air alone. Driving home, I cycled between fear that something had happened to her and anger that she would simply not show up. Multiple calls went to voicemail. She finally responded to a text at nearly 9 o'clock. "Sorry, work emergency. We'll explain later." That was it. No elaboration, no apology. The anger began to outweigh the fear. I got the kids from my sisters, thanking her and making an excuse about Lauren being stuck at work. My sister gave me a concerned look, but didn't press. Back at home, I went through the bedtime routine on autopilot. Stories, goodnight kisses, turning on the nightlight. My mind elsewhere. By 10:30, with the children asleep, I sat in the dim living room, a single lamp on, and waited, and waited. It was nearly midnight when I heard the garage door finally rumble open. Headlights swept across the wall as her car pulled in. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the adrenaline-fueled tremor in my hands. I had no plan for what I'd say. Part of me wanted to feign sleep and postpone the confrontation, but my heart was thudding with hurt and indignation. The door from the garage opened, and Lauren stepped inside, juggling her briefcase and a takeout coffee cup. She looked startled to see me upright on the couch. "You're still up?" she asked, her tone a mix of casual surprise and annoyance, as if I were the one breaking some norm by waiting for my wife on our anniversary night. I rose slowly. Yeah, I was worried. I tried to keep my voice even. In truth, I was beyond worried. I was livid and heartsick. She set down her cup and keys on the kitchen counter without meeting my eyes. "I told you, I had a work emergency. It ran late." "That's all you have to say?" I asked quietly. "You missed our anniversary dinner, Lauren. No call, no message. You left me sitting there alone for over an hour." Her face flushed, whether from guilt or irritation I couldn't tell. I said I was sorry. It's not like I wanted to. The court hearing went sideways, and then I had to calm a panicked client. It's not like I was out partying. Her eyes flicked toward me and then away as she offered this explanation. Something inside me snapped. The half-truths, the evasions, I couldn't swallow them any longer. "Really? Because it sure feels like you've been anywhere but here lately," I shot back, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Dressing up, going out all the time, forgetting dates that matter to us. If there's something I need to know, just tell me, Lauren." She went rigid, her demeanor shifting into that icy, lawyerly poise. "What exactly are you implying, Ryan?" she asked, using my name like a scalpel. My mouth went dry. I realized I had edged closer, my hands clenched at my sides. I forced myself to take a slow breath. This was exactly what I'd wanted to avoid. Accusations without proof. But the hurt spilled out anyway. "I'm implying that I feel like I'm losing you," I said, my voice rough. "I don't know where you go at night anymore, or why you suddenly need to hide your phone, or why you're so happy to be away from me and the kids." The words hung between us, and for a moment, I saw something crack in her expression. But then she crossed her arms tightly. "You're being paranoid. I can't believe this." She shook her head, letting out a sharp laugh that held no humor. "So this is what I come home to after a hellish day? Accusations of what, exactly? Cheating? Because I have to work and I actually try to enjoy my free time with friends?" She was good, turning the guilt into indignation, painting me as the unreasonable one. I had to remind myself that she did this for a living, control narratives, convince others. But I knew I couldn't back down entirely. "If you were really with friends from work tonight, call them right now," I challenged. "Let's settle this. I'll apologize for being paranoid if you can just prove it." Lauren's eyes flared with anger now. "This is absurd. I'm not going to dignify that with a response." She grabbed her keys again, as if ready to storm back out. Panic flashed through me and I lowered my voice, trying a different tack. "Lauren, wait. I'm not trying to fight. I'm hurt. Our anniversary matters to me. We barely talk these days. Can we at least be honest if something's wrong?" My tone wavered, genuine pleading breaking through. Her hand paused on her keyring. She looked at me, and for the first time that night, her posture slumped slightly. "I told you what happened. I'm sorry I missed dinner, but I can't do this right now." Her voice softened just a touch, nearly drowned out by the blood rushing in my ears. "I'm exhausted. We can talk later, okay?" Without waiting for my answer, she trudged upstairs, leaving me standing in the dim light of the kitchen. I listened as the bedroom door closed above. The urge to follow her, to demand more answers, was strong. But what would that accomplish? If she was lying, she'd only dig in deeper. And if by some slim chance she was telling the truth, I had just offended her deeply. Either way, this conversation had hit a dead end. I sank back onto the couch, heart pounding in my throat. The anniversary night was ruined, and worse, my worst fears felt more justified than ever. If there was any doubt before, her reaction had erased it. Something was very wrong, and she would not admit it. Not yet. As I sat in the darkness, one thought crystallized with icy clarity. I needed evidence. Cold, hard proof of whatever was going on. Because if my wife had truly betrayed me, I wasn't going to confront her with nothing more than hurt feelings. I was going to make damn sure that when the truth came out, it would come out on my terms, with irrefutable force. The next morning, Lauren acted as if our tense midnight exchange hadn't happened. She was up early, dressed smartly in a charcoal skirt suit, pouring coffee in the kitchen when I came downstairs. I half expected a continuation of last night's fight, but she simply said, "Morning," in a clipped tone, and then, "Don't forget Josh's parent-teacher conference is at 4. I nodded, searching her face for any sign of remorse or anxiety. It was eerily blank, her professional mask already in place. If I hadn't known better, I'd think I had imagined the argument entirely. But the knot in my stomach was still there, tightened by her casual facade. She left for work without another word about our anniversary. I got the kids ready for school, my motions automatic. Inside, I was churning. The thought of spending another evening tiptoeing around each other made me sick. I needed to do something. At lunch hour, instead of eating with my coworkers in the break room, I locked myself in my office and shut the blinds. My hand shook slightly as I picked up my phone and searched for private investigators in Colorado Springs. I had never in my life considered hiring a PI. That was the stuff of crime novels and movies. But I felt powerless, and I needed an impartial set of eyes on this. Scrolling through search results, I saw a few firms with professional-looking websites. One boasted former law enforcement agents on staff. Another highlighted their high-tech surveillance equipment. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the call button. Was I really about to pay someone to spy on my wife? The very act made my heart hammer with shame and fear of what they might find. But then I recalled last night, sitting alone in that restaurant, her stonewalling gaze when confronted. Yes, I had to know the truth. I made the call. A receptionist put me through to an investigator named Phil. He spoke with a calm, gruff voice that somehow steadied me. I chose my words carefully, aware that my office walls were thin. I said I suspected my wife might be seeing someone else and I needed evidence, and asked if this was something they handled. Phil let out a breath that sounded like a half-chuckle. "Unfortunately, it's pretty common. Yes, we handle that," he replied. "We arranged to meet after work at a discreet location, a coffee shop on the far side of town. I told my boss I had a personal emergency and left the office an hour early." My reflection in the car mirror looked drawn and tired as I drove. The logical side of me was still in disbelief that my life had come to this clandestine meeting. Phil turned out to be a solidly built man in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard. He wore a Denver Broncos cap pulled low and had the air of someone who'd seen it all. We sat in a quiet corner of the cafe. I found myself spilling details: Lauren's late nights, the missed anniversary, the gut feeling I could no longer ignore. He listened attentively, occasionally jotting in a small notebook. "Do you have any idea who the other man might be?" he asked. I swallowed, realizing I'd avoided pinning a face to my suspicions. Not really. Could be someone from her firm, or maybe a client. Or she mentioned an old friend from law school moved back to town. Honestly, I don't know. It could be anyone. Even as I said it, I felt foolish. How had I paid so little attention to my own wife's social circle that I was in the dark now? Phil nodded. All right, we can start by tailing her during those girls' nights and any other times you suspect she might not be where she says she is. He flipped to a fresh page. I'll need her usual schedule, work hours, any regular appointments, as well as description of her car, a photo of her for ID, and addresses of places she frequents. We talked logistics. As I provided details, I felt a strange dichotomy. Part of me was relieved that someone else was taking on this burden of finding the truth, and part of me was heartsick that my marriage had deteriorated to spreadsheets of her movements and surveillance plans. How long do these things usually take? I asked quietly. Phil offered a sympathetic half-smile. Depends. Sometimes we get evidence in a few days, sometimes a few weeks. We'll gather photo or video proof, whatever we can. Once we have enough, I'll compile everything for you. You just say the word when you're ready for us to stop. I signed the contract and handed over a retainer for his services that was large enough to make me wince. But I reminded myself what was at stake. The unknown was chewing me up inside. If Lauren was being unfaithful, I needed the facts, partly to confront her. But also, I realized, to protect myself and the kids if this went as badly as I feared. As I left the cafe, a cold resolve settled in me. I had just taken the first step down a path I never imagined walking, one that felt treacherous and wrong, but also necessary. In engineering, you trust data over feelings. Soon, I would have data about my wife's truth, and then I would know what to do. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Each time Lauren went out with friends or worked late, I found myself restless and tense, fighting the urge to confront her anew. Instead, I funneled my energy into being the best dad I could in her absence, helping with homework, cooking dinner, tucking the kids in. Inside, though, I was a storm of anxiety and anticipation, waiting for Phil's call. It came 2 weeks later on a drizzly Tuesday evening. I was at home cleaning up the remnants of dinner with the kids when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I'd saved under a decoy name. Got something. Can we meet? My pulse jumped. I texted back, tomorrow 7 p.m. at our previous spot. He agreed. The next day crept by. I could hardly focus at work, double-checking calculations for a design project and finding I'd made errors that my junior engineer had to politely point out. By 6:30, I was at the cafe already, nursing a coffee I didn't want. When Phil walked in, carrying a manila envelope under one arm, I tensed up so hard my neck ached. We skipped pleasantries. He sat down and handed me the envelope. It's all in here, he said quietly. Pictures, dates, times. My hands felt clammy as I opened it. The first few photos said everything. Grainy but clear enough in color. In one, Lauren stood in a parking lot at dusk, under the glow of a street lamp, kissing a tall man with sandy blonde hair. Her hands were on his chest, his arm around her waist. I recognized the dress she wore. She'd told me she was going to a coworker's birthday dinner that night. I flipped to the next photo. Lauren and the same man entering a boutique hotel downtown on another night. Another. Them seated side by side at an outdoor cafe on a Saturday afternoon, heads close together in intimate conversation. I realized with a lurch that she had told me she was taking the kids to the zoo that day. Instead, I had taken them myself when she claimed a work call pulled her away, only to see now that she'd met him while I walked our children among the elephants and lions. Each image was a fresh knife in the gut. But it wasn't until I saw the man's face in profile that recognition set in. I knew him, or at least of him. His name is Greg Thompson, Phil supplied, as if reading my mind. Vice president at a financial consulting firm here in town. Married, 2 kids. My breath caught. Greg. That Greg? He was the law school friend Lauren had mentioned months ago. I vaguely recalled a conversation last year. My friend Greg from law school got a job here, she had said casually. Maybe we'll grab coffee and catch up. I hadn't thought twice about it. I'd even encouraged her to reconnect with old friends. I never met the man, but I knew his wife slightly, Nicole, one of the moms in our kids' school carpool rotation. My stomach churned. There were 4 children entangled in this mess, not just 2. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. So it's been going on that long? I asked. From what we can tell, a few months at least, Phil said. We tracked several meetups. There's a summary in the report of dates and times. They have a bit of a pattern. He hesitated, and I sensed something worse was coming. Just say it, I managed. Phil cleared his throat. They usually meet on Wednesdays and Fridays when your wife says she's with her girlfriends, and occasionally over lunch. Also, I was able to get within earshot during one of their outdoor cafe meetups. He tapped the envelope. I included notes on what I overheard. I didn't record audio, but I caught some of their conversation. I reached for the typed report tucked behind the photos. Scanning Phil's notes, I felt my face burn as if scalded. The summary read, Subject, Lauren, discussed future plans with male individual, Greg. She said, quote, he has no idea. I feel a little bad, but I haven't been this happy in years. Subject laughed here. She mentioned, once I figure out the finances and custody stuff, I'll be ready to move on. Ryan won't see it coming. She also said, I just need to be careful and not mess up my chances of getting a good settlement. Male individual comforted her at that point, put hand on her shoulder, and said, we'll get through this. I want you free, Laure. End quote. I read those lines over and over, my vision blurring. He has no idea. That's what she thought of me, a clueless, oblivious husband to be duped. I haven't been this happy in years, not since before our kids were born, presumably, or before our mortgage and middle-class monotony weighed her down. Figure out the finances and custody. Good settlement. My wife was strategizing her exit, carefully ensuring she'd leave with as much as possible, money and likely primary custody of Megan and Josh, while I'd be left blindsided. A roaring filled my ears. I realized my hands were trembling. I'd crumpled the edge of a photo in my fist. I set it down carefully, trying to breathe. Phil was quiet, giving me space. I wanted to scream, to flip the table in that peaceful cafe corner, but I couldn't afford an outburst. Instead, I sucked in a slow breath and exhaled, staring down at the evidence of my life's implosion. The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it, something steeled. In that moment, any lingering illusions I had, the hope that maybe this was a mistake, or that Lauren might still be the woman I once knew, shattered completely. She was ready to burn our life down and walk away gleefully into Greg's arms, pockets full of the assets I helped earn, taking my children with her if she could. No, that would not happen. Not the way she thought. I carefully placed the photos and report back into the envelope, my movements deliberate. Thank you, Phil, I said, surprised by the calm in my voice. This is exactly what I needed. He gave a sympathetic nod. I know it's hard to see, but at least now you know you weren't imagining things." "No, I wasn't," I said quietly. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold clarity. The data was in, confirming the worst. And as much as it destroyed something inside me, it also ignited a grim resolve. Now I can start figuring out my next steps. "If you need anything further," he began, but I shook my head. "I have what I need, thanks." I stood up, tucking the envelope securely inside my jacket. We shook hands, and I pressed an extra folded bill into his palm, a tip I'd decided on beforehand if he got me proof. "Take care, Phil." Driving home, I felt like I was watching someone else pilot my body. My mind raced with possibilities, plans, and yes, rage. But I knew I couldn't let anger drive now. I had to be as methodical and ruthless as Lauren had been in planning her affair and her escape. She thought I would be an unwitting victim. She was wrong. That night, after tucking in the kids, I retreated to the garage, my makeshift workshop, under the guise of working on a home project. In reality, I needed solitude to think. The cold air smelled of sawdust and motor oil as I paced between my workbench and the half-assembled bookshelf project in the corner. My mind was already outlining steps, contingencies, like I was solving one of my engineering problems at work. First step, secure a good divorce attorney. So Lauren's a lawyer, and a damn good one. If she was plotting a divorce to her advantage, I had to assume she might have consulted someone quietly already. I needed representation that could outmaneuver whatever she had planned. I waited until the next day at lunch and made a call to an attorney a colleague had recommended months ago during his own divorce. The firm was based in Denver with a reputation for being aggressive advocates. By sheer luck, or perhaps fate, the senior partner, Margaret Liu, had an opening to meet me the following morning. Sitting in Margaret's sleek office overlooking the Rocky Mountains, I presented everything. The evidence from the PI, my wife's statements about a settlement and custody, my concerns about protecting my kids. Margaret, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, listened without interrupting, then calmly laid out my options. "Colorado is a no-fault state," she explained, fingers steepled. "The court doesn't consider infidelity in dividing property or setting support, at least not directly. However," she went on before despair could sink in, "we can use some of this information in other ways. For example, any marital funds your wife spent on this affair, hotel stays, gifts, can be argued as dissipation of assets. The courts can credit that back to you in the financial split." I thought of the dinners, the hotel in the photos. "I can get credit card records of those," I said. I had access to our joint account statements and Lauren's card activity. She did most of the household purchasing on our shared credit card, which I paid off. If she'd been using that for secret outings, it would show. Margaret nodded. "Do that." Now about custody. Adultery itself doesn't make someone a bad parent. But if we show that Lauren frequently neglected parental duties or left the children in your care or with sitters to pursue this affair, that could influence a judge's view on who is the more stable primary caregiver. "That won't be hard to show," I said bitterly. "I've effectively been a single parent for months whenever she's busy. I have texts where she asks me to cover for her at the last minute, like taking the kids to events she was supposed to." "Perfect. Save those. We'll compile everything." She made a list as we talked. Financial records, examples of her absences, PI evidence. We'd need to be selective with what to formally present, but its existence would be leverage. She also suggested I quietly document any important household valuables or accounts in case Lauren tried to move or hide assets. "Don't transfer anything yet," she cautioned. "In fact, once we file and she's served, Automatic temporary orders will freeze major moves of money. But if you think she might preemptively drain accounts, we could file an emergency motion to freeze them now. I doubted Lauren would act before knowing I was onto her, but I wasn't certain. We decided I would discreetly withdraw half of our main joint savings into an account in my name alone as a precaution, and immediately account for it in the divorce filing, so it wouldn't look like I was hiding it, just securing my share. We spent over 2 hours mapping out a strategy. My head was spinning, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of empowerment. This was a plan, and I was good at following plans. Before I left, Margaret stopped me. One more thing. How are your kids doing in all this? Are they aware of any tension? I paused, thinking of Megan and Josh's innocent faces. They know Mom and Dad have been arguing a little. I tried to keep it away from them, but kids sense things. Margaret offered a gentle smile. Just remember, whatever happens, they're going to need at least one parent who's fully there for them. Keep being that parent, and don't involve them in the adult issues. Courts look at which parent fosters a healthy relationship with the other parent for the children's sake. Ironically, even if that other parent was unfaithful. So keep your cool around them. It was sobering advice. I will, I promised. Leaving the law office, I felt the weight of what was coming. I was about to set off a bomb in our lives. One Lauren thought she controlled, but I was rewiring it to go off on my terms. Still, I had to be careful. If I tipped my hand too soon, she might retaliate or hide things. So for now, I had to act the part of the oblivious, loving husband a little longer. That may have been the hardest part. That evening, I mustered an apology. I approached her after the kids were in bed. She was in the living room, flipping through channels absently. I took a breath and said, "Lauren, about the other night. I'm sorry. I was stressed and I let my imagination get the better of me." She looked up, clearly surprised. We had barely spoken beyond logistics for days. "Oh," she said. "It's fine. I know things have been tense." I sat down on the other end of the couch. "I don't want us to fight," I murmured, injecting a note of weariness and sincerity. "I trust you. I just miss you." Maybe I overreacted. The taste of those words was bitter, but I managed to sound convincing. Lauren's shoulders relaxed a fraction. She offered a small, almost sad smile. "I miss you too," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I've been so busy." And then, to my slight astonishment, she reached out and squeezed my hand. It was the first affectionate touch she'd given me in I couldn't remember how long. "Let's try to do something together soon, just us," she added. I nodded, giving her hand a gentle squeeze back before letting go. Inside, my emotions churned, a conflicted mix of longing for that intimacy to be real and anger that she could still play this role so well. But I must have hidden it, because she seemed to accept my capitulation. For the next couple of weeks, we lived in an eerie semblance of normalcy. I played the dutiful husband and she, the busy but apologetic wife. She continued her nights out, though perhaps with slightly less frequency, or at least more communication, probably thinking my flare-up of suspicion had passed. I noticed she was being more attentive with the kids, too, as if checking some box, reading them bedtime stories, showing up to Megan's volleyball game. Greg wasn't there, I noted. Perhaps they decided to keep low for a bit. It was hard to watch her act like everything was fine, but that performance actually worked in my favor. It meant she suspected nothing of the storm about to hit. During that period, I also reached out to someone I never imagined I'd confide in, Greg's wife, Nicole. We weren't close friends, but we were friendly enough through school events. I got her number from the school directory and asked if we could meet for coffee, saying it was about something important concerning our spouses. She fell silent for a moment, then agreed to meet that Saturday morning. When I walked into the cafe, I recognized Nicole sitting at a corner table, looking anxious. She was a petite brunette with kind eyes, the sort of person who was always volunteering at school. As I approached, she gave a faint, nervous smile. I realized she might already suspect why I wanted to meet. After pleasantries, I decided to be direct. Nicole, I have something I need to show you. I slid a smaller envelope across to her, the one I had prepared with duplicates of a few choice photos and a copy of a particularly damning part of Phil's report. My heart pounded as she opened it. She sifted through the contents, and I saw her face blanch. A hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God," she whispered, eyes glistening. She looked up at me, stricken. I thought maybe, but I prayed I was wrong." "I'm so sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't know any gentle way to do this, but I figured you deserved to know. Greg and Lauren, it's been going on for a while." Tears brimmed in her eyes. She nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you for telling me. It's awful, but thank you. I've had a feeling for months. Late work nights, him being so secretive with his phone." Her voice trembled with anger and hurt. "I even asked him straight out once if there was someone else, but he denied it. Made me feel crazy for even suggesting it." She closed her eyes briefly, composing herself. When she opened them, resolve had joined the hurt. "At least now I know I'm not crazy." "We'll get through this," she said, half to me, half to herself. "They don't get to win." We talked softly for a short while. She had 2 kids as well, and like me, her first thoughts were how to protect them. She said she'd suspected something about Lauren after seeing an overly friendly text pop up on Greg's phone one night, but she hadn't had proof. Now she did. I told her of my plans to file for divorce soon, and that I intended to cite some financial misconduct due to the affair. She revealed that she had a family lawyer friend and would be taking action as well. We agreed to keep each other informed, at least so that any legal steps didn't inadvertently hinder the other. Though they were separate matters, the timing could cause fireworks for Greg and Lauren both. Before we parted, Nicole wiped her eyes and gave me a surprisingly fierce hug. "We'll get through this," she repeated with determination. "They don't get to win." I couldn't have said it better. "No, they don't," I replied. As I left that meeting, I felt a kinship with Nicole forged in mutual betrayal, and I felt even more certain that following through with my plan was right. There were real consequences coming for the people who had thought so little of blowing up our families. 2 weeks later, everything was in place. My attorney had drafted the divorce petition, citing irretrievable breakdown of the marriage and noting the dissipation of assets due to an extramarital affair, without names for now. We waited until the kids were at school and a day Lauren would be in her downtown office. That morning, I felt a nervous energy coursing through me, like before giving a big presentation, except the stakes were infinitely higher. At 11 a.m., I got the text from Margaret. Papers served. I imagined the scene, a professional process server walking into her firm, asking for her by name in front of her colleagues, handing her the envelope. I wondered what she did. Did she open it in confusion? Did she already fear something when she saw my name as the petitioner? The not knowing made me restless. I didn't have to imagine for long. At 11:30, my phone rang. It was Lauren's cell. I steeled myself and answered, trying to sound calm. "Hello?" There was a few seconds of heavy silence, except I could hear her breathing. Then her voice tight and seething. "What is this?" I replied evenly, "It's exactly what it looks like. I've filed for divorce." She sputtered, rage and panic seeping through. "How dare you?" she snapped. "You file behind my back. No discussion, no—" She stopped herself, probably mindful she was in a public place. In a deadly quiet tone, she continued, "You had me humiliated at my workplace. Are you out of your mind?" I had to take a slow breath to keep from matching her anger. "I'm perfectly in my mind. And I think we both know why, Lauren." I said her name with a weight of meaning. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice wavered. No, actually. I don't know why. So enlighten me, Ryan. Why are you doing this?" Still deflecting, still pretending. But I could hear a tremor of fear. I decided enough was enough. "Because I know everything," I said softly. "I know about Greg." Another silence. Longer this time. I imagined the blood draining from her face as it had from mine when I first saw those photos. "Whoa, what are you talking about?" she attempted. But the quiver in her voice betrayed her. "You're a brilliant lawyer, Lauren, so don't insult me with denial now. I hired a private investigator. I have photos, dates, even notes of what you told him about me." My voice hardened. "About how clueless I was, how you were planning to bleed me dry and take the kids. So yes, I filed for divorce. Before you could." Her sharp intake of breath was the only sound for a moment. When she replied, her tone had shifted from anger to alarm. "Ryan, we should talk about this. Not on the phone." "There's nothing left to talk about except the terms," I replied coldly. "You made your plans. Now I've made mine." She started to say something, but I hung up. I didn't trust myself to hear more just then. I knew she'd likely rush home, and indeed, by early afternoon, I heard her car screech into the driveway. The front door flew open, and Lauren stormed in, still in her suit, her face flushed red. I was at the dining table with a folder of documents, bank statements, schedules, preparing for a meeting with my attorney. I rose as she came in. We were alone. I'd arranged for a friend to pick up the kids from school for a play date, sparing them from walking into a war zone. She closed the door and stood there, trembling with barely controlled fury. "How could you do this?" she hissed. "Spying on me, dragging our personal business into public by serving me at work?" I met her eyes, feeling an unexpected calm in the face of her storm. "You mean how could I not just sit around and wait for you to betray me on your schedule? You were planning to divorce me, Lauren. I heard it from your own mouth. Planning exactly how to maximize your take. So spare me the outrage." She blanched. You heard?" I tapped the folder. "I have a transcript. You said you were going to get a good settlement out of me. That I'd never see it coming. Well, surprise." My bitterness slipped out in a cold smile that I hardly recognized as my own. For a moment, she was at a loss. Then, in classic form, she pivoted to offense. "This PI of yours, did he record us? That's illegal, Ryan. Were you trying to set me up?" I barked a short laugh. "Set you up? I didn't need to. You set yourself up. I simply uncovered it." I opened the folder and began tossing photographs onto the table, one by one, like slamming down cards in a winning poker hand. A shot of her in Greg's arms by his car, another of them entering the hotel, another of a kiss in the park. Lauren's eyes widened at the visual proof. She looked away, a tear escaping down her cheek. "It wasn't supposed to. I never wanted to hurt you," she said, voice breaking. "Funny, that's exactly what you did. You lied to me, to our kids. You'd have gutted our family and walked away smiling. So now it's my turn to make sure you don't get to just walk away from this." My words were like ice, but inside I felt a torrent of emotions. Pain, anger, even a twisted sense of pity watching her crumble. She stepped forward, reaching out as if to touch my arm, but I moved back. Her face crumpled. "Ryan, I'm sorry," she whispered. I messed up. I never meant for it to go this far." Real tears were flowing now, streaking her mascara. "Can we please just talk? We could try to work something out. For the kids." I stared at her in disbelief. "Work something out?" I repeated. "After everything, you think there's a chance of fixing this marriage?" She shook her head vigorously. "No, I mean, not right now. We don't have to nuke it like this. We can have a quiet divorce, sort it privately. We can keep this out of court, out of the papers." And there it was, the angle she truly cared about, keeping it quiet, preserving her reputation. I let the silence stretch, watching her tremble in front of me. In that moment, I realized she was truly afraid of consequences, of losing the image she so carefully cultivated. Part of me almost felt sorry for her, standing there undone. But then I thought of our children, and how she would have torn their world apart on a whim, and my resolve hardened again. "We will sort it out," I said, my voice low but firm. "But my way. I've already given my attorney instructions on what I want. Primary custody of Megan and Josh, for one. Given your schedule the past year, that shouldn't be a problem." Lauren opened her mouth to argue, but I pressed on. "As for finances, we'll split assets fairly, minus whatever you squandered on your affair. I've documented those expenses, and I'm not on the hook for your law school friend's heartbreak, by the way." I eyed her. "Nicole knows." Her hand flew to her mouth. "You told Greg's wife?" she said, almost a squeak. She deserved to know. She's filing for divorce too, as we speak. So you and Greg can continue your romance openly now, though I suspect it's less fun under these circumstances. I couldn't keep the bitterness out. Lauren slumped into a chair, burying her face in her hands. For a long moment she sobbed. I watched, feeling oddly detached. This was the woman I once loved deeply, now a stranger reaping the consequences of her actions. It hurt to witness, but she had brought us here. Eventually she looked up, eyes red and pleading. "Think about the kids," she croaked. "They need their mother too. Don't try to take them away from me." That struck a nerve. Did you think about the kids when you were sneaking off to hotels, when you missed our daughter's play? You had every intention of dragging them through a divorce when it suited you. The difference is, I'll do it in a way that protects them as much as possible. Can you say the same? She cried harder, unable to answer. In that silence, I realized the fight had gone out of her. She was defeated, at least for now. I gathered the photos back into the folder and adjusted my tone to something more businesslike. "My attorney will be in touch with yours. If you're smart, Lauren, you'll cooperate and settle this with the terms I proposed. If you try to play hardball, well, those pictures and more can become part of the public record. I doubt your firm or our friends would be impressed." She wiped her face, a flash of anger returning. "You'd really drag my name through the mud after all these years?" I gave a harsh laugh. "Funny, I was thinking the same of you. I'm just ensuring actions have consequences, but it's your choice. Fight me and face exposure, or meet my terms quietly." Lauren stared at me for a long moment. Finally, she nodded weakly, a semblance of the practical lawyer reasserting itself. "I'll have a lawyer contact Margaret. she said in a dull voice, knowing who must have filed on my behalf. She slowly stood, shoulders sagging. I'm going to stay at my sister's for a while. I didn't object. Without another word, she walked upstairs. A short while later, she came down with a hastily packed bag. She paused by the doorway, as if wanting to say something, an apology, a goodbye. But in the end, she left without a backward glance, the door closing softly behind her. As her car engine faded down the street, I sank into the chair, exhausted. It was done. The worst of it anyway. I had won the opening battle, but the war, the legal process, was still ahead. Yet in that moment, I felt a grim satisfaction. The playing field was now mine. The months that followed were tough, but ultimately validating. Lauren and I communicated only through lawyers and brief civil exchanges about the children's schedules. True to my word, I pursued primary custody. She contested at first, but under the weight of evidence and perhaps lingering guilt, she eventually agreed to a settlement. I would be the custodial parent with the kids living primarily with me, and we'd share joint legal custody. She would have them every other weekend and dinners once a week. It wasn't easy for the kids at first. There were tears and confusion, but I made sure they got a therapist to talk to and as much stability and love as I could give. Over time, they adapted, and it helped that I never spoke ill of their mother to them. I wanted to, God knows I did, but I remembered Margaret's advice and held my tongue, letting them form their own judgments as they grew older. Financially, our divorce settlement was more than fair to me. We sold the house and I kept the majority of the proceeds to purchase a new home for the kids and me, something modest but comfortable in the same school district. Lauren kept her car and her 401k, and I kept mine. We split savings, though the accounting subtracted the money she'd spent on hotels and gifts. She didn't fight that deduction. Perhaps most significantly, neither of us paid alimony. Our incomes were roughly comparable by the end, and she relinquished any claim after seeing I could cite her affair expenditures. In truth, I think she was eager to avoid a public trial that would expose her behavior in detail. Her firm never openly fired or censured her, but word got around in our social circles about why we divorced. Discreetly, of course, people talk. The shine on her reputation dimmed. She didn't show her face at the usual PTA meetings or neighborhood gatherings for a long while. The few mutual friends we had largely sided with me after the truth leaked out. A couple of her close friends tried to reach out to her, I heard, but she kept a low profile. I suspect the shame of it all weighed on her more than she let on. And what of the lover who was supposed to be worth losing everything for? Greg's life also imploded. Nicole went through with her own divorce. Rumor has it she got the house, primary custody of their kids, and a hefty share of their assets. His standing in the community took a hit. The scandal of a local businessman carrying on with a married woman became quiet gossip. He wasn't invited back to coach the youth baseball league, and a few clients at his firm requested to work with someone else. Last I heard, Greg and Lauren did attempt to continue their relationship openly for a short time, perhaps clinging to the idea that all their sacrifices should mean something. But it didn't last. Under the stress of financial fallout and public scrutiny, whatever lust or happiness they'd chased fizzled. They broke up within the year. Lauren moved into a small rental townhouse across town. She's still their mother, and I encourage the kids to see her and respect her, but I can tell they keep a certain distance. Children grow up fast in the aftermath of betrayal. They love her, she's their mom, but they saw how often she wasn't there, and I think some part of them remains guarded. She, to her credit, seems to be trying in her own way now. I've seen her on her weekends attempting to be more present with them. Perhaps losing nearly everything shocked her into remembering what actually matters. Time will tell. As for me, I won't pretend I emerged from this unscathed. There are nights when the loneliness hits, when I lie awake feeling the phantom ache of what I thought my life was. But then I remember the lies, the cruel selfishness of what she did. And I find peace in knowing I did right by myself and our children. I didn't stoop to anything illegal or violent. I handled it with a clear mind and cold strategy. In the quiet of my new home, I can look myself in the mirror. One evening, months after the dust settled, I was helping Josh with a science project in our kitchen, and Megan was singing along to music in the background. I realized I felt something that had long been missing. Contentment. Hard-won, yes, and cautious, but real. My family, smaller now but intact in its own way, was okay. I was okay. I stepped outside to the backyard after the kids went to bed that night, looking up at the clear Colorado sky. The air was cool and still. I thought about the man I was at the start of this. Naive, trusting, maybe a little too complacent. That man was hurt deeply, but he learned quickly. He fought smart and protected what he loved, and he survived. In the darkness, I allowed myself a brief, triumphant smile. I had taken what was nearly the end of my world and engineered a new beginning from it. In the end, her betrayal did not break me. Instead, it forged me into a man who not only won the battle she never even realized was being waged, but who walked away victorious. Emotionally scarred, perhaps, but healing, and without a doubt, stronger than before.